Good morning. My name is John Gross, and I'm a member of the Alliance Historical Society. And I'm here today to tell you about how two cannons from the Civil War era ended up in Alliance, Ohio. At the end of the Civil War, there were over 1,000 of these cannons, both Union and Confederate. And as the science of artillery moved on, the United States Army had no more use for these. They became obsolete. And between 1870 and the turn of the century, the government offered these cannons to, first of all the national battlefield cemeteries, such as Gettysburg, Shiloh, and Vicksburg. And if you've been to those battlefield cemeteries, you'll see these cannons all straight out in a row. Still, there were several cannons left over, and they were offered to communities like Alliance and organizations like the Grand Army of the Republic or other organizations, the Daughters of Union Veterans. And in the 1890s, the City of Alliance was offered two cannons and checked with the fire department because the culture at that time, usually these cannons were given to communities. Communities then assigned them to the fire department. And these two cannons came to our fire department. And over the next 2 decades, they were on carriages, and the fire department would take them out on various occasions, such as community festivals, community picnics, different kinds of organizations that wanted to see the cannons. And that was something that the firemen really enjoyed. And if you look in this picture right here, you will see that there are the firemen on top of this very cannon, on top of the carriage. And as you take a real close look at this carriage, one of the spokes is out. The rim itself, the wooden rim, is starting to deteriorate. And by the 1920s, these two carriages got so deteriorated that they were discarded. And these two cannons basically were tossed aside of the fire department. And we have pictures of them there. And somewhere in the early 1930s, both of these cannons were stolen. And that would have taken quite an effort because this particular cannon weighs 686 pounds as it sits right here. The other cannon, the Confederate cannon, weighs the same. And the reason why these have the markings of the founder of this cannon. It was founded in 1838 by the A.N.P. Ames foundry of Springfield, Massachusetts. The Confederate cannon is a copycat cannon, and that was founded in the Traeger foundry in Richmond, Virginia. So the Confederates, when they first began the war and started storming Union forts in the South, they confiscated all these cannons and then replicated them because that's their model. So that's how the Confederate cannon and the Union cannon came to Alliance, and that after they were retrieved from being stolen in the early 1930s, the Grand Army of the Republic, the John C. Fremont Post, came to the city and asked if they couldn't have the cannons placed in the city cemetery as a memorial to the Civil War dead that were buried there. So in 1934, the John C. Fremont Post of the Grand Army of the Republic had these two cannons, this one and the Confederate cannon, placed in the cemetery on concrete pedestals, and that they were, and if you see there's a hole drilled right there, they drilled a hole, flipped the cannon over, put it down in a cement pedestal so it could not be stolen again. And since 1934, up until 2012, these cannons sat in the cemetery. As time passed them by, there's no more GAR, there were nobody buried by these cannons. So the cannons basically became kind of unusual pieces in the cemetery that were mostly ignored. How the cannon came to come here is my story. In 2012, I became Safety Service Director for the city. Also, I was a long-time docent at the city cemetery, and I was aware every time I went to the cemetery that these two cannons were there, and I wanted to know about their history. So I began researching that, and while I was doing that, the American Civil War Artillery Preservation Society from Ephrata, Pennsylvania, called me and wanted to visit our cemetery and look at these cannons, which I agreed to, and the next day they were here. And they looked in the cemetery at both of these pieces, and they verified that this piece was a Union cannon that actually was in the Civil War. It's 1838 when it was founded by the N.P. Haynes Foundry in Springfield, Massachusetts. They wanted to purchase this cannon as well as the Confederate cannon because their society was really concerned about preservation of these brass cannons. And the reason for that is that right during the Second World War, the government confiscated hundreds of these cannons to melt down to make artillery shells for the war effort. So slowly over time, these cannons would just be disappearing. So that's the reason why they wanted to buy these two cannons and preserve them. Plus, they said that they would offer the city $75,000 for this cannon and $60,000 for the Confederate cannon. I said I don't have that authority to sell those. I'd have to take that up with City Council and the city administration. But thank you for coming here. So I thought that was the end of that. The next day they called me and wanted to come back out. And when they did, they offered for this cannon the city $100,000 and the Confederate cannon $75,000. So that really got my interest in the history of these cannons when I found out how valuable they are right now, and that they are part of Alliance's history. And I'm a strong believer in physical history where you can touch history, and there you can touch that cannon. And I talked it over with Mayor Andriani and the members of council who are on the land committee here in the town, and I told them what it was being offered, but it was my strong recommendation that they refuse the offer. Our history is worth a lot more than that. You could give us $1 million. I still wouldn't recommend to you the purchase of these cannons. So when I found out the value of these cannons, I had this one immediately removed from the cemetery because I didn't want it stolen again. And I had it stored away while we could get a carriage to place it on and demonstrate it as a memorial piece and a historical piece for the city. As far as the Confederate cannon, they offered $75,000. And that in both cases, the Preservation Society offered to do replacement cannons that we could then put back in the cemetery. I thought about that for a long time because the current city administrations were not really interested in doing anything with the cannons as far as putting them on display for memorial purposes. So I had this one stored in the mausoleum for some 10 years till the change in administration with Mayor Andy Grove coming into office. When he found out about this two cannons, he was excited as I was about them and wanted to know all about it. And that's when I got him interested in doing something with these cannons. And he said, "You're the project manager, go ahead." So that's how this cannon now sits where it sits. There is a wheel to show you the wheel of the carriage that we're currently making. And that carriage is right now under construction, and there are no tax dollars from the city that are involved in this project. This is all going to be this carriage fully built from donations from organizations in the community as well as individuals. Just to show you that there is an interest in this community for their history, and this is a part of it, and it'll be, when this carriage is finished, displayed on various occasions, such as the Memorial Day Parade, the 4th of July fireworks, the Carnation Festival Parade, and other parade requests. Otherwise, it's going to be on display here in the lobby where it currently sits. The Confederate cannon has now been placed in Memorial Park, right in the front of the 5 memorial headstones commemorating the war dead from World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the Gulf War. So as I invite you to drive out past East State Street and take a look at that Confederate cannon that is in front of the 5 current headstones that are dedicated to the war dead of World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the Gulf War. Also, I invite you to, when you get an opportunity, come down to City Hall and view this cannon particularly, because this means a lot of history for the City of Alliance. And that's why I am head of this project, and I'm very excited and dedicated to having citizens of Alliance and other citizens who pass through know a little bit more about your history. Your history here is what makes you today. And I thank you for listening.